Hey, what's up, friends? This is Janet.
Ryan.
Here at Borg Fit, we're in our basement. And today we wanted to talk about perceived exertion. What is perceived exertion? Why do we need to know about it? And how can it help us in our overall performance? And we'll be talking about it very briefly from the resistance training side as well as the cardio training side. So essentially, when you talk about rate of perceived exertion, what we're really talking about is just how intense are you working out, all right? Now, you can measure this a couple different ways, right? You can use heart rate monitors. There's other type of data that can be programmed into what you're doing. Like on a spinning bike, you can get power meters, and that power, which is the output of your resistance and speed, is going to really tell you how hard you're working. But what if you don't have those things? Or what if you just don't want to look at a number that's generated by a computer? That's where the rate of perceived exertion comes into play. So let's think about it as very simply a scale. Most commonly, I would use a 1 to 10 point scale, but there's also a Borg scale which measures it from 6 to 20. So just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to show, and if you don't mind showing our lovely viewers, you got to go up a little close and personal. So on a 10 point scale, you can see how it correlates. It's from the bottom going up as far as effort, where you start out 1 being very, very super easy, no problem. He's like, what did I say, like eating bonbons while watching TV, all the way up to number 10, where it's like, I'm dying. Like, well, seriously, not seriously. All right, so that's kind of everything in between that is also what we're going to be focusing on today. Go ahead, you can move that back. And I like this one because it has the emojis to really reflect, okay, this is the things that we're going to have to take into account. How we're feeling, you know, are we breathing hard? Are we sweating? Are we able to pass the talk test where I can talk to Ryan like this and exert power at the same time? So, you know, and basically, you know, all of those factors together as you're working out tell you exactly how hard you probably are working. So, Ryan, let's talk a little bit more about what it means feeling those things and not mistaking it for other things.
The frequent question is differentiating between exertion and pain. Physiologically, there's very clear distinctions, but unless you're very experienced, you may have some problems sometimes understanding the difference. So, from a very simple standpoint, imagine the difference between being stung by a bee or a wasp and walking up a flight of stairs. You walk up a flight of stairs, you feel your breath start to go, you feel your legs struggle, versus being stung by an insect where you have this intense, very localized point of pain. So localized versus this overall feeling is one of the obvious differences. So pain being your brain saying, stop, this is bad. So an injury, for example, would fall into that category. Whereas exertion being this overall process, I'm getting tired or I'm really having to work hard through either a repetition or some sort of cardiovascular exercise. They do feel differently, but it is possible to conflate the two. So to go a little further, just because this is my area of expertise, so resistance training. If the scale is 1 to 10, with 1 being the easiest and 10 being the absolute hardest, and then trying to bring pain to this and how to understand the difference. So imagine something where you're able to do 30, 40, even 50 repetitions. You can do them correctly, you can do them with correct form, but you're able to do this huge number of repetitions. That's pretty low on the exertion scale. You're not exerting yourself that much for each individual repetition, even if at the end you're very tired. Versus a much more focused, heavy effort with a weight that is maybe more towards your 3 repetition or 1 repetition max. Well, now your body is all in on every single rep and definitely pushes more towards the upper scale. Now, imagine now you're lifting either that small weight or that large weight and you hurt something. You pull a muscle or you have a cramp. So instead of this, I'm getting tired or I am tired, but I'm able to do this, a localized, immediate sort of stop from your brain pops up. And that's the easiest way I think you can start to think about the difference between pain and exertion.
Agreed. I think it's also, it's important to really be, again, mindful of what's happening and your own body awareness. These are things that only you know of what's happening, right, in your brain and your body, what you're feeling. So again, sharpening that connection between your mind and muscle is also going to be a huge indicator of how you're feeling, whether you can actually push yourself a little bit more, or more importantly, if you need to take a step back. And that's where, if you've already been able to differentiate that something's not pain, but it is exertion and effort, how to work within those limits safely. So Ryan going over what we do with resistance training, and that also varies, right? Because you have like 1 rep max type of effort, right, over 85%. And so a lot of times percentages are thrown into things. The same thing in cardiovascular activities, like, it'll tell you maybe start warming up at about 50 to 60% of your max heart rate. A simple calculation for max heart rate is taking 220 minus your age. And that's relatively where your max heart rate would be at a max effort. In this case, your max effort would be somewhere between 8, 9, 10 on the scale. But it's not always completely accurate, right? So what we're trying to see within each of these different levels, which I'm going to show you from a cardio perspective, is actually what is happening, how we start out with our breath, how our body feels aerobically, and how that feels once we start getting to a very labored point where you're working anaerobically from without oxygen. So remember, you need oxygen the whole time to be able to, have metabolic processes happening throughout your body at the same time. But when you intensify that, your aerobic capacity starts to tire out. And that's where you kick in some of that anaerobic. So anaerobic will help you get through those intense moments, but it's not a very long stay. So if you also think about muscle fibers, right? You have your slow twitch, your fast twitch. Your slow twitch are much more endurance-based. Your fast twitch, you're going to get a lot of output, power output, work output, intensity, but it's for a very short period of time. So I'm kind of trying to tell you to correlate these things with the numbers as well. Your body at a max effort, a true max effort, is at that point, like on this scale where you see on the 10 emojis, like, I'm dead. Well, yeah, in a sense, because your body will, don't worry, it knows well enough how to take care of that. It will literally hit a wall at a certain point that you just cannot keep going, right? You're gonna feel it, and that's normal. And usually in a cardiovascular effort, they say maybe about 15 to 30 seconds of effort can really be that truly realized max effort, depending, of course, on your fitness level. Whereas anything that's going below that, you have a longer period to stay within each of those zones. So another thing when you were talking about pain, lactic threshold. So what if I'm feeling a burn? Is that pain or is that something else?
So the trick again is how intense and how localized is the actual feeling. So the burn in your muscles, when you're doing bicep curls and you feel your biceps burn, even though it can be very intense, because it's not a single incident that causes you to have to stop, that is exertion, and a growing exertion as you continue through it, versus, oh, I hurt my elbow and I'm trying to bicep curl and now I feel this sort of maybe agonizing twitch each time I do it. That would fall into the pain category.
Yeah, and so if you're feeling that burn, that is an actual process taking place in your body where your blood supply and oxygen supply are just not being able to meet the demand of the oxygen coming in. So, you know, you start to have this byproduct of lactate acid. And so that does feel like, I know in cyclists a lot of times they'll tell me, I feel a pain. It's like right above their kneecap, right at the bottom of their quadricep. Yeah, because that's where you're really exerting from as far as that pushing on the pedal. And yeah, there's going to be some buildup there if you're going for a really intense effort. And it's not necessarily pain. So again, this understanding mind-body connection. So let's try it out. Now, Ryan and I had done this at this a spinning conference 2 years ago where we were taking there was a lot of focus on power spinning. But then also trying to figure that out while you see your numbers on the screen, what you're actually correlating it to on your own chart from 1 to 10. So that's what we're going to try right now, just for a few minutes, just for fun.
I'm just stepping aside.
Yeah, why don't you encourage beyond? How about you take the chart and you tell me where I need to be at each point.
So where do you feel right now from your perspective?
So right now I am pedaling with very, very light resistance. I feel good. I'm obviously, my breath is normal. I'm not trying to have a difficult, or rather I'm able to have an easy conversation with you. So there's that talk test, right? That's part of it.
So likely 1 to 2. We'll say a strong 2
Yes.
on the scale. So why don't you add some resistance in? Let's
Okay.
see what happens, but not a huge amount.
Okay.
Just give us a nudge.
All right, so we're adding a little bit more in.
Now, keeping in mind that, so Janet is really well conditioned, so it's not going to be an instantaneous process, particularly for a cardiovascular exercise. But we'll get there. So, what do you feel now? What's happening?
So, and I want to also just emphasize, I'm trying to actually keep my RPM speed at around 80. That's going to kind of be my goal to figure, you know, how long I can stay at 80 as the resistance increases. Right now, you can probably tell a little bit that my heart rate has come up a bit. My breathing is a little bit, not very labored, but a little bit. And I'm starting to feel a little more burn happening in the legs. My legs are warming up. But I'm still feeling really good. Like I could definitely be at this speed for a while and this resistance.
So, right now, she's in the middle range, the 4 to 5 range. Able to talk, feel like you can go all day at this, but you don't feel like you're just sitting there. Now you know you're actually exerting yourself like this. So why don't you go ahead, let's get to the point where you can't talk. That should be entertaining. Go ahead.
Well, let's ease into that. All right, so I'm giving it another turn. A couple turns. All right. 4.
And again,
Wow.
she's really well conditioned too. So it's not going to be instantaneous. It's going to build to a degree. But
Yeah.
So, all right, now that you can't describe it very well, now's a great time for you to tell us what you're feeling.
So breathing is becoming more labored. Heart rate is up. This is that time where I start to really focus on my diaphragmatic breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I definitely feel my legs are working a lot harder. My core is stabilizing a lot more. Starting to get really warm here.
It's not very warm in here, by the way.
So yeah, I'm working. I can still talk, but it's not super easy.
So we're moving into that, pushing past the middle part of the full spectrum and now going 6, maybe a light 7, which is to say, can still talk. Not comfortable anymore, but able to talk, starting to sweat, definitely feeling her lungs get pushed. So let's just briefly and entertainingly give us a little more.
All right.
So, much like lifting weights, once the resistance hits a threshold, it is an absolute struggle to move it at the correct rate.
A lot harder. Harder to keep speed.
So we're getting to the point now where her ability to talk is impaired. Her breathing has to be more focused by definition. And really, to hold this pace, it can't be an all-day thing. In fact, now it's a much briefer experience. So now we're pushing more into the 8 range. Now I'm not going to push her into a 9 or 10. Please go ahead and come on back down to earth. So again, It was difficult. She felt physiological changes, but it wasn't pain. It wasn't being stung by a wasp or stubbing your toe. It was all the processes that allow you to exercise ramping up to the next stage, to post cardiovascular capacity to the point where you're going to anaerobic areas.
Let's talk about anaerobic real quickly and then demonstrate. Like I said, that's where you have that point of breathlessness, right? So, and make sure you're breathing through your diaphragm so that you're not constantly in that state. So, when you go anaerobic, like we said, you can only do it for a very finite period. It is actually trying to push as hard as you can, so you need your mental focus as much as your physical focus. And that's where that intensity really matters. Because if you're able to accept that discomfort that you feel, knowing that it's not going to last forever, that's going to push you past thresholds. That's going to raise your VO2 max. That's going to increase your performance, speed, strength. That's just that deciding factor that makes a huge difference in anybody's, whatever they're doing, whether it's through athletics, working out, running, swimming, whatever. So if you want to see differences, you want to see your metabolism change, you got to include some of that intensity. All right, so let's try it. What do you think? Should we go heavy? Should we go for speed? Both?
Let's go for heavy. We're nearing
Okay.
the turning point here.
All right, so let's time it. Kind of like we're doing a Tabata. All right, so we'll do a couple back and forth of speed intervals. It'll be a little bit lighter resistance, not light. And then powering my RPM between 100 and 110. And 10 seconds of rest in between. All right, so we'll just do it a couple times. We won't do a whole
I'll run
Tabata.
the camera.
All right. Find some Tabata timing. Good. Remember, Tabatas, it's all about the max effort. All right. So we're trying to go max every single time here. So near that I'm dying point. So I'm turning up my resistance. I don't want to be bouncing in the saddle, and I still want to generate force. All right. Timer. There we go. I gotta psych myself up. All right. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Good, good, good. I'm right about 106 right now. RPM, 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Recover. It's only 10 seconds. 3, 2, back up. It hurts. 8 seconds. 4, 3, 2, recover. Okay, we'll go one more. Whew. All right. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Push, push, push. Come on, come on. 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Whew. And when you finish, make sure you keep moving.
Okay, just to be fair, I'm not going to make her talk. So, before we wrap up, as always, please stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves. Recover when you're working out. Work out the appropriate amount of days. And you have to push yourself, but also, honestly, you have to recover and take care of yourself. So, from Bold Fit, we
Thank
say
you guys.
take
Hope
care.
this helped.